And they had an anchorman, they had a reporter, and they had a weather guy, and they had a photographer, and that was about it. And I said, hey, I could do sports better than that. I know more than that, because I'd been a sports junkie all my life. He goes, oh yeah, come on up, we'll try it. So I went up and I cut an air check for him. He goes, you want a job? So that's literally how I got into the business.
Step into the Fieldhouse, your front row seat to legendary victories and untold stories. Hey, I'm your host, Lance Lunner, breaking down sports from the inside out, along with co-host Jimmy Lackey. It's more than just a game. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. Hey, welcome into the Fieldhouse Podcast, a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. I'm your co-host, Lance Lunner. We have Jimmy Lackey here. Jimmy, how's your day?
Great. Really good.
Really good?
Yeah, it's been a good morning. There's a lot going on and a lot getting done, and as long as we're moving this direction, I'm in good shape.
Jack Nicklaus, he had all these businesses, so when he went to bed at night, he wrote down everything he was supposed to do the next day. That improved his sleep, he said, tenfold, because he didn't have that worry item on him. Do you do anything like that? Because you have so many, irons in the fire, as they say?
Most nights, I'm going to fall asleep in my chair 10:30.
Yeah.
I'm going to wake up about 2.
Really?
I'm going to work till about 4. Then I'm going to go back to bed and then get back up and go at it. That's most nights.
That's a whole podcast of it.
Wow, I guess.
I'll say this. That reminds me of my guy, Putt Powell. And we're going to get to Lee here in a second. But Putt Powell would go, come in about 3, leave at about 6 for dinner. Francis, his wife, would have dinner waiting for him. He would stay at home until he would watch the sports, all the broadcasts. And then about 11 o'clock, he'd be in there, maybe 11:15. And then he did all his writing between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m.
Nobody to bother him.
Nobody to bother him. Yep.
And we know how that goes.
Oh.
And then he would leave and go home and then start his next day. But you're kind of like that, man. 2 to 4. What do you get done at 2 to 4?
A lot. Because if I don't get done by 4, my wife gets up at 5, and so you better get up and get back to sleep, or she's gonna wake you up. Yeah.
Hey, we don't mean it. This is podcast number 38.
Wow.
And we kind of left our special guest today hanging there. Let me just do a quick introduction, if you don't mind, Lee. 42 years. Get that correct. I did 38 at the Globe News, and I thought that was a long time. But 42 years in Amarillo television. Those who know him best know he started out at KFDA with Kevin Long back there in Channel 10. But it's 38 strong years at Channel 7. That came to a close Friday. Here it is a few days later. But his knowledge of the Texas Panhandle sports is absolutely off the chart. Amazing. I don't care if it's high school sports, West Texas A&M. Big proponent of hockey here in Amarillo. And then, of course, his beloved game of golf. Nobody did it like Lee. But I can promise you this, Jimmy and Lee, and mark my words, this man will be inducted into Texas Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame very soon.
Yeah.
And so we want to welcome officially into the Fieldhouse Podcast, Lee Baker.
Thank you.
Lee,
it's great to be
joining us today, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here. This is quite a setup.
Yeah, I like it.
I've watched Jimmy sent me one with Coach Broadhurst, and I looked at the studio and I went, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now that I'm in here, we're way back in the bowels of Kids Inc. Let me tell you, it took a while to walk back into where we're located.
You know what people don't realize about this building? It's the length of a football field plus 1 foot.
I believe it now.
From goal line to goal line, we're 301. We're 301 feet.
I've driven behind the back and coming in where all the storage of all the equipment is, but I didn't realize coming in the front way how far to go.
Yeah.
Man,
you can get your steps in around here. You can get your steps in. Yeah.
Hey, this is podcast number 38. We have a tradition here, and this is a hard one actually. We kind of a favorite player from your past. It could be your childhood teammate. It could be, just somebody random. But 38 is really, really out there. Even my heart, like love for the Denver Broncos or baseball in general. So
I was clueless. I was clueless till I pulled the book out.
Okay,
and everybody that doesn't know the book, we've got a book that sits here that my dad gave me years ago. It says the best of numbers.
That's
and
great.
It tells who all wore certain numbers. But 38, I didn't have a clue, and so The face of it was Kurt Schilling, the bloody sock, and but I wouldn't have been able to pull that out of the.
You didn't find anybody from like the 27 Yankees or anything like that?
No, I don't go quite back that far, Randy. You're a little closer to that than me. Not much, not much. But if we're gonna go there, I'm gonna say you're a little closer than me.
You don't have a great 38. I had Fred Turner was a teammate who actually wore 38. I can just say that off the top of my head.
Wow.
Nothing special, like a high school teammate of mine. But Bakes, you got it?
I don't have it. No, if you'd have said 14, I'd have been good because I always wore Ernie Banks's number when I was a kid.
Nice.
In Little League and Babe Ruth and Legion Ball. I always wore 14. But that's the only number I really, recognize and remember. Well, Roger Maris and that sort of thing, Mickey Mantle, but it was
not Craig Morton.
No, not Craig Morton.
Come on. Or Elway.
Yeah.
Elway and Mantle, man. Yeah. All right, Lee, I wanted to kick it off. We can't thank you enough for coming on. What a career you had to grind it out for 2 years. But obviously, you woke up Monday, for the first time, not to get corny here.
No.
First time where you really didn't have to get ready for a broadcast or a show or anything, or plan your week like you did for all the people you work under you. So just take us in.
Well, not only that, but your time schedule changes.
Yeah.
In this
I've worked
process.
2 to 11 all my life. That's, well, I say 2 to 11. Those are the hours on the clock, supposedly. Yeah. But then, of course, there's press conferences in the morning. There's signings in the morning. There's signings at night. You mix it all. You mix it all in as you go along. And sometimes I'd get up and go to a signing, go back home and get ready for work, and then have brunch and then go to work. But yeah.
What was that like for you, though, waking up Monday?
Well, it was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have to do anything. I went to the golf course.
Imagine that.
I went to the golf, and I walked in and I knew the guy behind the counter. He goes, "How's it feel to be unemployed?" I went, "Thank you." Well, I said, "It's my first day. Give me some time to get used to it." So, and I've had things to do. I've had to change my phone. I've had to go to the VA because
You'll love this one too. He had Lee's like a company car for
37. Well, for the whole time I was at Channel 7, I drove a company car. So we've always been able to save at home with my wife driving a one car.
Yeah.
She went to WT. She just drove back. And when she worked at WT, she just drove back and forth. Now it's the only car we had. So I turned in my keys on Sunday. It was my last day on the clock, actually. So I've been out looking for a car.
That's awesome.
Actually, I want to find a pickup truck and let her still drive her old car, but I don't think that's going to work.
That's
how do you like that?
The shift in paradigm.
One of the things that's legendary, Lee, is television around here is such a revolving door, and you're such a staple. And there's other guys, Doppler, people like that. But how do you think? Obviously, the audience identified with you. Yeah. So how did you help that out, or with the station? You're identified with Channel 7.
Right. Well, let me just say, first off, I didn't really think I'd be living in Amarillo all my life like I have been. I'm like any television person. Somebody comes here, it's the old revolving cycle. I want to come here for 2 years, learn my craft, get a better job in a bigger market. I actually thought I had a job in Austin one time. I really wanted to go back to New Mexico, Albuquerque, because that's where I came from. And the station in Farmington was purchased by an Albuquerque station, and they turned it into a satellite station. And so they got rid of everybody. And I was hoping they would hire me there because I really liked New Mexico at the time. My oldest daughter was born in Farmington. So I wanted to live there, but and then like this story as a golf thing, I wanted to go to work for the Golf Channel. I was in 95 or 6, and I got a couple of phone interviews, but I never got to go back because Johnson Wagner's grandfather, you remember M.T. Johnson? I got M.T. Johnson to write me a letter. He'd done the master's pin settings, all this. I thought, this is a lock. I'm gonna get this one. I didn't get it, so I just acquiesced and just said, well, maybe I'll just live here. I ended up, being here. And I didn't mean, it didn't make me mad or anything. I just thought, no, I'm gonna go do this. I like doing it. Yeah.
I used to work with Lee's wife.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
At WT, yeah.
She worked in the McNair Scholars Program. She was the office manager.
Nice.
For a long, long time. She retired from WT, and In fact, I asked her last night, I said, do you think the McNair Scholars Program is going to still continue with all the government cuts because it's a government-funded project? And they always had to write a paper to apply for funding. So that was always a stressful time when you were asking for money from the government. So we'll see what happens. But yeah,
what she's thinking is it going to continue?
She wasn't really sure. I mean, you just have to fill out all the paperwork. Jimmy knows how that goes. If you're applying for funds from a government or the state or whatever, you just have to figure out what you're going to get and if you can get it or not. But it's a wonderful program.
Yeah.
I got to say real quick, a personal story with Johnson. I'm at the Masters, and there's this big group around interviewing. He had this mustache.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody's having fun with him. And then I asked him an M.T. Johnson question, okay?
Oh, gosh.
And, man, he got all emotional. But I'll say this, and it's a national broadcaster kind of jumped over my question. He goes, no. M.T. Johnson gets his time right now.
Oh, really?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I don't care who. Basically,
he
made
just
me feel pretty good.
Yeah.
But he just kind of shut the guy down. Like, I'm answering this question first.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool of him.
M.T. Johnson was great. I can remember sitting at the Amarillo Country Club when that, he had a patch on his eye, and we also had a common theme. He'd been in the Navy, and I had been in the Navy, and he asked me what I did, and I told him, and he said, and he made some comment. And we had like an hour-long conversation because he'd been on submarines.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, it's been 4 years in the Navy. I never hardly saw a ship. So we had this wonderful conversation about that. But anyway, I thought if anybody could get me a job, it'd be M.T. Johnson within the Golf Channel. And I was willing to go do anything. I'd have swept floors to go to the Golf Channel.
Yeah, jobs like that.
So answer me a question here. Let's go back to KFDA. Mm-hmm. Who was on the set with you when you started? And here's the reason I'm asking. I grew up intrigued with the news people, and here's why. I was a sixth grader. My dad was coaching, and his assistant coach had a heart attack and died in the classroom. My mom's a school nurse. It was a traumatic situation. Coach Bannister passed away. And it wasn't until the next year, the Channel 7 All-Stars, Pratt and all of them, started making the circuit. And coming up, they came to Dumas, and they did a big benefit for the Leroy Bannister Scholarship Fund.
Wow.
And so I was young, and I became intrigued with those guys because I thought that was so cool that they came to our town.
Yeah. So
I want to go back because I've watched news and sports since I was a kid. 76-ish, is that when you went to KFDA?
No, I didn't get there till 83.
83.
There were a lot of...
So who was on the set?
Well, I think I worked with...
Your boss was...
Well, you mean the main set? Kevin Long.
Yeah.
And I think Walt Howard was a reporter at the time.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of who the anchorman was. And then Dave came in not long after I did. So he's been here a long time also.
Yep.
In fact, Kevin Long is the one who nicknamed him Doppler Dave because at the time, Doppler radar was just becoming a big thing.
Yep.
And Dave glommed onto it and they got it. And so Kevin,
Mr. Nickname.
Kevin nicknamed him Doppler Dave. And it stuck. It stuck all these years.
Kerry King there back then?
Kerry King, yes. Kerry King. I was trying to think the other day. I was having a hard time going through the list of all the people who were my coworkers at Channel 7, let alone trying to remember all the anchors.
I'll tell you a funny story. When I worked at WT, I had a standing spot on the first Thursday of every month on the morning show, back when the morning show was very vibrant. And I had a standing spot. And Charlie Patterson, you'll know Charlie, was cameraman there forever. And I've told this story before. Pulled me aside. He was retiring. And he said, Jimmy, how long have you been coming here? And I said, about 7 years. He said, come back here. And he took me back and he had this notebook and had all the people that he'd worked with in that notebook.
Wow.
He said, when did you start doing this? And I said, 89-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. So he started right there, and I go, that's the one right there. So we went through all the morning anchors up until that point in time, and I had worked with 23 morning anchors in 7 years.
No one survives the morning. The morning shows are terrible.
Yeah.
Lee, how many have guys you worked with in sports?
Well, gosh, I'd have to say, because no one lasts more than 2 years because they want to advance or in some cases, like Paul Tubbs, his wife, got a job in Lubbock and he moved and then he got, he's Mr. Red Raider. So he went to Tech and got work. Yeah. I would say, I'm going to say it probably 12 at least, maybe more.
I would think it'd be more.
Maybe 20 because I've had some really weird experiences with, I was thinking about this a while ago. I had a news director who was kind of a crazy lady, and she took my office because it had windows, and her shrink told her she needed an office with windows because the other news director.
Isn't it great to be unemployed?
This is
Say what
I
the
tell
heck
the
you want.
story. She's not around anymore. But,
That's great.
the news director, John McKissick, had this office. It was great. It was a big office, and it had 2 doors. It had one to the newsroom, but it had one down a hallway where if he wanted to interview people, he could bring them in that way, close his windows to his window blinds, and nobody knew it was in there. He locked the doors. Well, the sports office was next to it. So Terry Amber and I, our office looked straight out over I-27, people leaving downtown, going right out of Amarillo, going south. So I'm on vacation in Indiana visiting my family, and we get this new news radio. So I thought I'll be polite and I'll call her. So I call her and I go, hey, so-and-so, I haven't had a chance to meet you. Look forward to meet you. I look forward to see you when I come back. She goes, that's great. When you get back, I want your office. So she kicked me out of my office and kicked me down the hallway somewhere to another office. But
Now
all kinds of,
right?
What's that?
Kind of a
Yeah, well, the guy we're in now, it's called, remember Hotline?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I was in the old Hotline office for years.
Wow.
Yeah. Larry Kerr was the last Hotline guy we had.
So I can remember, and I'll see if you remember this. I grew up watching wrestling. My dad worked for Dory Funk Sr. when he was in college, so I knew the Funk family very well. And Buck Robley got hit and ran. He was a wrestler and got a hit and run, and it was on Hotline forever. If you have a tip about this hit and run, please contact Hotline. And I will tell you one more story. I could tell you the phone number at Channel 7 right now, and here's why. Because when I was a little kid, I used to try to call Tukey all the time.
Tukey?
373-1787. From that day, that's when I learned that phone number. But I used to try to call Tukey in the phone booth.
I ran across a bunch.
I know this one. What is this?
Tukey Tugnas had a morning show.
Had a morning show.
Yeah.
And he had a phone booth. And if you got in to call, you got to talk to Tukey. And when he was on the TV, and you got to talk to him live.
Your voice was on TV?
And your voice was on TV. That was like...
that was way back in the 60s.
Late 60s, early 70s. Oh, yeah.
You know Dr.
60s.
Michael Johnson, right? Well, he used to live in Hamlet. And he told me about the times he would ride his bike from Hamlet to Channel 10... or Channel 4, I guess it was.
Yeah, there's
studio right there off of where Wonderland is.
Yeah, behind the
golf course.
Behind the golf course.
The movie theater.
Yeah, behind the drive-in.
Yeah.
And he would drive over there, and somebody had a morning show with kids show, and he would ride his bike over there and be on the show, and it was a big deal.
Yeah, Tukey was a big deal when we were kids.
Oh yeah, I met him a long time
and
ago.
they were in the Maxwell building at that time.
Yeah, when I first got here, Channel 7 was in the Maxwell building because I happened to go downtown one time with Kevin, and we went in there. And it was almost like, this is a TV building? I was like, because, there was like living quarters on the 3rd floor or whatever, and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yep.
And they had all those AP machines just lined up with chatter nonstop.
Yeah. I was very interested in that.
When you were talking about anchors, I was trying to think, Ellen Robertson Neal.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with her on the weekend, and she was... In fact, when I came here, I thought, this is really weird. There are 2 women who were the news anchors on the weekend. I was a sports guy. And I'm trying to think of the other lady's name. She married Danny, the DA. I'm losing my mind here because I'm trying to think of names. Anyway, but there's 2 women, and I thought that how forward that was that there were, because most of the time it's just like white male guys who were the news anchors, maybe an assistant, a woman starting to get into the business. But in Amarillo, there were 2 women. They lasted quite a while too.
Speaking of that, what'd you try to bring to the viewers, Lee? You did a great job of. So when you were building the broadcast for that night, or what was your overall plan for?
Well, I think like anything in a market like this, you want to try to reach out to as many people as you can. I mean, when I first started, when I was just the weekend guy at both Channel 10 and Channel 4, I lived on the road. I went to, you were talking, in fact, you mentioned it last week. DJ came in and he mentioned the 1989 Quanah team.
Yeah.
I went to their state semifinal in Bedford, in Pennington Field in Bedford, Texas. We had
Pennington was a state of the art.
Oh man, it was unbelievable. Yeah. Back then, it was unreal. It was like way ahead of its time.
Way ahead.
And this is how much money Stanley had at the time. The station was on good terms. We flew to the game. A photographer and I flew from Amarillo to Dallas, went to this game, and then I think we might have even spent the night, got up and flew back. Wow. And we actually put the tape on a plane that night and sent it back to Terry Amber. So he'd have it. Yeah. But yeah, it was
Pennington Field, the press box's window went forward. We've never seen anything like that in our lives.
Where's that located?
Bedford.
Okay.
And it had underneath it had a huge area for like the band could actually walk and practice their marching.
Oh, wow.
It was unbelievable.
That was way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of
its
its time.
Late 80s.
Yeah, 89. Because, and again, I don't remember his name, but they had a running back who went to TCU on their football team. I went, that's pretty good.
I'm going to ask you this question. I should have asked this of Lance too. Maybe I'll just ask it of both of you. What is your most vivid West Texas A&M University athletic memory? What's the most vivid?
Ooh,
This will be a good. You'll love this one.
I have one easy.
You want it good or bad?
It doesn't matter. What's the one that immediately comes to your mind?
Gary Moss. Gary Moss used to complain all the time about getting hosed by the referees. It didn't matter if he shot 100 free throws and the other team shot 5. He would just complain constantly. So one night on the air, I just said it. I was at Channel 10 at the time. And on the weekend, they had done something, and he's moaning and groaning. And I said, hey, Coach, just quit moaning and groaning. First off, have your players make free throws because they were missing them. And I said, secondly, just quit complaining about the referees. You moan and groan all the time. Didn't think anything about it. Went on. They're playing Drake or somebody. And you remember at the Civic Center, they had a media table at the end of one table, and the players went by. So I'm sitting there. I think John Ayers might have been with me at the time, even the late John Ayers. Well, we're all sitting there, and all of a sudden Moss walks by, and he has that book. He had a big book he always carried in his hand, and he shoved it in my face. And he went, hey, bud, what do you think about that? You think we shot enough bleeping free throws then? Turned around, walked away. And all the guys on media row go, what did you say to him? So that's the first thing that always, there are a lot of things happen, but I'm telling you, I never had a coach shove a book in my face and yell at me in the middle.
I thought Gary Moss and Terry Emburn looked a lot alike.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I always thought they were.
Globe News had that whole issue with Moss.
Oh, yeah.
Discovered the phone.
Oh, yeah.
$20,000. He thought I was out to get his job.
I was working in housing during those days, and all those guys were living in our residence halls.
Remember back then, we actually got the phone bills.
Yeah.
So weren't they stacked in like these cabinets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for a month they had a 20,000. I mean, for a couple months, but the card got out in Hawaii. But anyway, and then the players just came to me with all these stories. He refused to talk to me anymore. I had to cover that beat that year.
Oh, wow.
Without him saying a word to me.
Oh, my God.
You know what I mean? It was brutal.
Oh, yeah, it had to be.
So it was so awkward.
Now, see,
But the Globe News isn't going to back away. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I had to do that. But so we got no great stories out of it. But those players like Chili Dog,
JR.
Oh, God.
Eric Carmen, and Big O.
Orlando.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They bought him a car for like $7,000.
James Jackson, too.
Yeah, James Jackson.
I forgot about
Went to Alabama.
Yeah.
They bought Big O a car, and Earl Davis, who was from D.C.
Right.
The other Davis went to OU.
Yeah.
When they were JC players. He was livid. He's like, he comes to me because I was younger at that time, so he flew with the team.
Yeah.
He flew with the team.
I know,
too.
yeah.
Like in the hotel. So this was so brutal. But anyway, long story short, Earl goes, hey, did you know they gave Big O a car? And they won't give me pizza on Friday night for free. You got to do a story on it. I found out it was like a used $5,000 car or what at the time.
NIL in the 80s.
Yeah.
Moss.
Oh, God. That's probably that's probably the worst one. But I think the only other thing I think about is sitting in an empty Kimbrough Memorial Stadium with the university president doing an interview without football for that season.
Yeah.
Thinking of Texas football, high school, college, and no football.
You ought to be running the alumni office at the university.
Yeah, that's
when
right.
that
You were
happened.
doing that. Yeah, it was.
Eastern New Mexico was the last game before.
And
that.
it was sleeting.
Oh, yeah.
We were all up in the press box.
Well, yeah, one of our guys did a story, and there was like 5 fans in the stands.
You know who was coaching on the other sideline? Don Carter.
Dr. Cawthron, yeah.
Yeah, he just held up his ring to the guy when he was asking, like, why? He goes, "Why are you here?" This is why.
2 things I never wish on an alumni director at any university is dropping your football program and changing the name of your school. Those were brutal times.
Oh, man.
And then having a daily
Oh, gosh.
segment dedicated to you on the front page about how bad the faculty can't stand the university president. Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to have to go combat every day. No, I just dodged them like the Dickens because I didn't want to talk to them.
Hey, mine would be the '86. I happened to get a fly with the team down to the Texas A&I.
Oh, you were there for the brawl.
For the brawl.
Oh,
1986. What a game. Johnny
Bailey, Heath Sherman.
He should it to the NFL. On the defensive line, yet an NFL. Todd Mayfield, James Morton.
JR.
Davis. Yeah, JR. I mean, all those guys.
Bodie Patterson, Stan Caraway, the whole crew.
The whole crew. But anyway, the fight afterward. But anyway, almost one of the greatest games ever because WT scored on all 7 possessions in the second half to win 54-49. The game ended only because Johnny Bailey got tackled, like at the 4-yard line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. We're listening. I've been probably listening to it at the time. Yeah.
And so I was on the field, brutal deadline, trying to get a quick quote. You know what I mean? And so I'm right there when the guy hits.
Coach
the guy
K.
actually grabs one of WT's guys' helmet and hits Kelly on the knee. Okay. So in my story, I write Kelly goes to the ground. Kelly somehow has a video of it, from a distance. Okay.
Yeah, there is a video like that. Yeah.
He calls me in and goes, Lance, am I on the ground? His knee was like this far from hitting the ground. Okay. He goes, I did not go to the ground. So, sorry, Coach.
Oh, I tell you.
Anyway, what a game. What history, what stories with
that. One of my best friends, Gerald Welch, was the tight end in that bunch. And it's that's the group from WT that won the national championship without ever getting the recognition, because back then we played a real tough non-conference schedule that year. That was our first year in the Lone Star Conference, leaving Division I, and so our record at the end, we went 6-0 in the conference, and but we didn't get the LSC didn't have an automatic bid at that time, and so Kingsville got the bid, and they won the national championship.
Although I will say this though, Jimmy, I don't think anybody got the bid.
No, nobody did,
because they only took the champion.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah,
they would have to take the champion, and that was A&I's only lost.
Yep.
I happened to fly to all the games with them, so look at the schedule then real quick. This is Lee's story. We got to get them.
No, I know. Go ahead. No, I remember. I went through all these.
Louisiana Tech lost like 17-10.
Yeah.
We're down at Stephen F.
Yeah.
They have the ball inside the 5 to win that late. So you're right. They went down to Troy State, which.
Oh yeah, Troy.
Knew, and little Mike, somebody behind the really great teams they lost to. But definitely over schedule. Mm-hmm. They were 0-4 going into.
They were.
And
two things about that '86 theme. I still have a wooden belt buckle in the shape of a football. It says LSC champs on it. It has 1986. I don't know how I got it, how it got passed around,
That's cool.
but I got it. It's really nice. But the other thing is, whenever I think about these stories, you talk about those schools. And I don't mean to denigrate WT, and I know Michael McBroom did a good job, but when you hear about Troy State going up to FCS, and you hear about all these schools that they used to play who are now not in Division II, I just think when Abilene Christian went, WT should have gone. At least, I think they should have gone even before. I think they had a chance, but back in those days, when they made the decision to go, what's the great quote from the Arkansas coach? It's why they call it Nolan Richardson. When somebody asked him what do you think about WT going to Division II, he says, "What do you think they call it Division II?" Something like that. But you're going down. You're going to a lower class.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are friends of mine that still have an issue with that to this
I
day.
think they should have done basketball. I really do. Nolan Richardson wore the polka dots.
You remember him getting kicked out of his last game, right?
Yep.
Amarillo.
Yeah.
Those were great Cager Club luncheons back in the day.
Oh, they were. Oh, yeah.
Versace and all of them used to come to town.
Wichita State coach was Stevenson or
yeah. Richardson was at Tulsa.
extra.
Dick Versace was at Creighton.
This is how.
Yeah,
but
extra toughness, extra effort, or something.
Yeah.
Like all these initials all over him, like on his glasses,
Really?
on his sleeves, on his shirts.
Yeah. I'm gonna go off subject here, but I got to get this in so I don't forget it. I can't tell you technology helps us a lot in a lot of ways, and Maddie can tell you nobody's better at it than she is in terms of getting our information out to people. But back before we had access to that every day, the only person I had available to me to get something out at a deadline time, if we needed coaches or we needed something, I could call Lee, and every time he would take whatever time out of the end of his newscast to say, hey, Kids Inc. needs some coaches for basketball. Would you please get this done? Awesome. Every single time I ever called him, and I didn't go to the well very often, but when I did and I knew he needed it, he was the one guy that I knew I could pick up the phone and call. And I would tell you, the phone would ring the next day. And this was before we had social media and all that stuff to help us get the word out. It was hard to get stuff out to people, but I knew I could count on Lee, and I'm telling you, the reason I know that people watched you is because our phone rang the next day. And so before I forget to say anything about that, I want to tell you thank you for that.
And one of my questions was, speaking about Lee, great outpouring on social media. When you were retired. Yeah, what did that mean to you?
I was astounded. My brother even texted me, who lives in Indiana, and he kind of follows me on Twitter. He goes, dude, you got a lot of fans out in West Texas. I said, hey, I don't have that many followers, but everybody responded. It was quite overwhelming. There were a couple in there that kind of caught me off guard about, somebody said something about his sister had a disability and she got to use the remote controller and she watched KBII TV, and that's how he got his love for sports, watching me. And I go, well, you don't really realize you have an effect on somebody like that when you're
from your Farmington days.
Oh yeah, somebody. Yeah. Oh, in fact, awesome. John Askins. He owns a radio station in somewhere in Central Texas. It's KTIM, and I knew it was him because when he said Farmington, because his parents built a house in Pagosa Springs, and every summer he would leave Houston, where his dad was whatever his dad did, and they would go to Pagosa Springs for 3 months and spend there. And he used to still go up there. They still had that cabin. I went up there with him a couple times when he was at WT, and he said he used to watch. The only thing he could watch was Farmington TV because it was in the Four Corners. And I went, well, that's a black. And ironically, I responded back. I was going through my desk and cleaning out stuff, found boxes, and I found it was called Kiva TV, Kiva. TV in Farmington. I said, I found an old KIVA TV business card.
Wow.
That is cool.
Here's you a Farmington story. My middle daughter is a speech pathologist, and she was working at Northwest here in the pediatric unit. And she gets a phone call from this company that's looking for speech pathologists to work with rural schools that they can't bring in a certified speech pathologist because it's small market.
Oh.
That's her job now. She is Farmington, New Mexico's speech pathologist, and she does all of her work with Zoom with her classes in Farmington every day. That's
really
she's in the school system through Farmington. Her company placed her there, and so her kids are at Farmington, New Mexico. Wow. She gets up every day, and that's who she works with all day long.
Four Corners is an interesting place.
Yeah,
it's pretty.
Did you go straight to the Four Corners from your Midwest days?
No, I got. It's kind of involved. I actually. I was going to jokingly tell Jimmy if he needed an umpire, I'd be around this summer to umpire.
Good.
If I could use $25 at a time or whatever. Yeah. But I actually something weird happened. I was with a company and I wanted to do something else, and somebody told me about a job you get in broadcasting. I was a salesman and a board operator at a small place in Arizona, and to supplement my income, I umpired baseball games. And it was so hot where I lived that they didn't play during the day. They played like 9 o'clock at night. They played all their games once the heat went down. So that's kind of where I got started. And then a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to go to Carlsbad, New Mexico. Would you like to, want to come along at a radio station? They were looking for new people. So I went to Carlsbad, and from Carlsbad, I went to Farmington.
Okay.
And then when I was in Farmington, I was still doing radio. I actually liked being a country DJ at the time. That was kind of fun.
Did you have a nickname or anything?
No, not really. But I wasn't really a country music fan at the time, but I sort of got into it. And so I was just a country DJ. And when I was in I started doing play-by-play for Carlsbad. And then before that, I had done some for a school in New Mexico, in Arizona. But when I got to Farmington, they already had play-by-play guys. It was a big area. They have the Connie Mack World Series there and all that. But they had a TV station, and I was watching it one night, and the sports was horrible. And no offense to anyone, it was some girl, but she was like a reporter or photographer, and she just got on there. So, and I ran across the the anchor man. They had an anchor man, they had a reporter, and they had a weather guy, and they had a photographer, and that was about it. And I said, hey, I could do sports better than that. I know more than that because I'd been a sports junkie all my life. He goes, oh yeah, come on up, we'll try it. So I went up and I cut an air check for him. He goes, you want a job? So that's literally how I got into the business.
Wow.
That's a great.
And you were talking about out in the middle of nowhere. Let me tell you, when you got to drive to the Navajo reservation to shoot a basketball game, drive back and do all that, the Four Corners is pretty spread out. I mean, we think we're spread out, and we are spread out, but they're spread out too. But they, and that's where we did the story with the Colorado football coach.
McCartney?
McCartney?
No, before McCartney.
Gary Barnett.
Gary Barnett. I met Gary Barnett because when I was in Farmington, I got a call. They only could see us in Durango, and they go, hey, we're hiring a new football coach. Can you come up to the press conference? I go up there to Fort Lewis, and it's Gary Barnett.
Guess he knows Gary Barnett.
I know. That's what we talked about. I go.
He was the high school football coach.
He was your high school football coach too?
Their academy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Good friend. I played, in fact,
I don't think he lasted at Fort Lewis a year or two. He didn't go.
A year or two. No, then he
and went back to Colorado.
As the coordinator.
But yeah, that's how I got into the business, and it went from there.
Hey, speaking of that, what I mean, you've covered so many great stories here, but are there a couple? I know this is an impossible question to answer just from my background, but are there a couple of favorite members of Texas Panhandle sports events or teams? Or
I think the first thing the time I really realized high school football, how big it was, because I came from Indiana. You couldn't get into a high school basketball game. Okay, every game was packed. In my hometown, where I grew up, at the time, the high school was an entire city block, and on that block was a gym, a swimming pool, wrestling.
Gym.
The town was 21,000, and the gym was 5,500.
Wow!
Sold out.
That's Civic Center size.
Sold out every game.
Yeah.
My aunt, I had an aunt. She went to high school there, and even into her 70s and 80s, she still had 2 seats to the gym. She didn't always use them, but she had 2 tickets, bought them all her life, high school basketball. So anyway, I moved here, and the first year I got here, I was in the middle of it was the middle of football season, and kind of got a feel for everything. And I think it might have been 84. You'll probably remember this more than me. 84 or 85, when they used to play Saturday afternoon football games, which Eric Mims still wants to do at Bivens. They should. Anyway, it's either, again, my memory is getting fading here, but I think it was Amarillo High and Palo Duro, 1984, 85. So I go out to Dick Bivens Stadium, and it's full. It's the first time I'd ever seen a high school football game. I mean, there have been many good crowds at Bivens and so forth, but you couldn't get in. It was standing room only. I went, and I was down on the field, and I'm just looking around going, this is my high school football team never had half this. They had a third of this many people, maybe. Yeah. And it just blew me away because I went, this is really cool. And so that's when in fact, I even think I called my brother long distance and said, man, I went to a high school football game today, and there was like 14,000 people at it. I go,
so was that Coach Dipple days?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because
it ended in a great finish, the whole thing.
I went to Indiana University. They didn't get 14,000 for football games back then because they were terrible. Yeah. Purdue now was different, but yeah. But that always stuck in my mind, and I went, that's really amazing.
Wow. That might have been the game that ended like.
Yeah. The tie or field goal at the end. Yeah.
The tie game was PD and Amarillo High tied 20-20 out there.
Yeah.
I think this is probably 88.
That might be a later one, yeah.
Anyway, and the only way Plainview, who was coached by Steve Barr at the time,
I remember this,
get into the playoffs.
Yeah, he thought it was rigged.
Tie. Yeah.
He thought it was rigged.
He thinks it's rigged.
I'm sure he does.
PD
had Michael Westmoreland.
Oh yeah, the general. Yeah.
Yeah, the little general, and they got 27. He gets hurt. Amarillo High comes back, ties it. Now I will say, the last 6 minutes of that game, nobody tried to do
anything.
You know what I mean? It's just, here, Lee,
hand it off and go.
Here, take it up the middle. But I'll never. Yeah, those are great.
There are a lot of things. I was thinking about something
else.
Well,
on that?
And it has nothing to do with Amarillo, but I like car racing.
Sure.
And I grew up 60 miles from Indianapolis, so I was a big open wheel fan racing. But I'd never been to any stock car races. But one time, before I got into broadcasting, after I got out of school, I had a job with a company, and they sent me to Alabama. and I went to Talladega. I had never seen Indy's big, but I had never, and I got to go in the court, and I got to see how high banked those things are. And then I realized why they could go 200 mile an hour in a Chevy, but you didn't think a Chevy could go that fast. It was just a centrifugal force. But when they opened up Texas Motor Speedway, because we were always going to games stuff, and every once in a while we'd go down there and we'd see it being built. And I went down to the first ever media day when it was open, all of that. And I'm with John Scarberry, former Tascosa Rebel football player.
Held the record.
He's still in the record books. Yeah,
cash.
He's our photographer, and you can never do this day and age. But we're on the roof of Texas Motor Speedway doing stand-ups. Me with a microphone in my hand, and he's behind. And he goes, "Can you keep backing up a little?" I go, "Dude, if I back up anymore, I'm gonna go down. You're gonna go home alone." So, but boy, unbelievable panoramic view from the top of the Texas Motor Speedway. Yeah,
wow. That was cool at that time because
I used to
all these guys like famous drivers.
Just
were like you had this with them.
Back when they I be sitting next to you know who you're sitting next to. Being an Indianapolis 500 fan, first I met him on a plane one time, and he kind of remembered me. We're walking into media day, and this is back in the day when they gave you everything. I mean, they had knives, they had luggage, and so we're walking in to go to media day with everything logoed on them. Eddie, Oscar, he did anything. Anyway, so I look up and it's Johnny Rutherford, Lone Star JR, and I'd met him once before. And he walked past me, and he's carrying all the luggage they're giving out, taking it out to his car. I'm going, oh man, we're going to get luggage. He went, "Hey, how you doing?" I went, "Mr. Rutherford, how are you?" He actually remembered me because I was on a plane one time going to Indiana, and it was right before the 500, and he was on the plane going to Indiana. And I just walked up to him and said, "Hey, I just want to say hello. I'm a broadcaster, yada, yada, yada." And he actually remembered me. Awesome. But back in the day, TMS, that was the place to be. It's kind of hurting right now a little bit.
It's done, so pretty much.
Well, a lot of people from here go down.
Yeah, no. I mean, one race it's down to.
Yeah.
They're thinking they're going to sell it and all that.
Yeah,
stuff,
no. You start thinking about it. It took me. I have boxes of stuff that I've cleaned out of my office. You gave me a Don. You gave me a Don Meyer book.
Yep.
I put that in my library the other day.
Yep.
That I had stacked up. I had books galore and tried to clean everything out. And I had like stacks of Tall Tower Open golf tournament folders.
I'm glad you brought that up. That is one thing, Lee. You have blessed the golf community of this whole area with your coverage, with your passion for the game, but also by running a tournament or helping run a tournament, I should say.
It's a kiss of death.
What was that experience?
I went to work. The first day I'm at Channel 7, I walk in, Terry Ambrin's there. I get settled in, and he goes, "Hey, Baker, you like golf, don't you?" We played golf. He was just being a smart aleck.
Yeah.
He goes, "You like golf, don't you?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, guess what? You're in charge of the Tall Tower now." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, here's what we do." He goes, and this is before we had sponsors, and before all it was like a little 2-day deal, and it's not like it is now. We used to have our salespeople go out and get like stereos, whatever, vacuum cleaners, and we would have drawings. And people, that's what the golfers want, and they got little gift certificates also. But we didn't have it like it is. It's like expanded like it is now. But he goes, "Your job is to get the handicap of every golfer entered in the tournament." And so the deal was, the way the USGA works is they send you get a USGA card at the first of every month with your handicap, your current handicap, because you turn it in the GIN system and it goes through all that. So they sent it in. Well, we went to start announcing it, and they would of course send in the May or April card. And we would, or we would call up to the pro and go, "Hey, so-and-so's in our tournament. What's his club handicap?" We'd write it down. Every golfer, honest to God, and I love golfers, but golfers will look for every edge they can. Oh, yeah. By the time they came to play in the tournament, they were 2 shots better than what they turned in, just so they could get into a different flight. And we used to joke about, I can't say it on the podcast, but we used to joke about how, look for an edge. It was great. So I did that for years. I'd get on the phone and I'd be cursing. I'd be saying bad things about golfers, and he'd be over there laughing, going, "How you like that job now, huh?" Because he had to do it. McKissick made him do it.
Gotcha.
So that was fun.
But it's a tradition now. You got to be proud of all.
Oh yeah, no, it's growing. wonderful sponsors, Richard O'Neill, and and Toot and Totem, and all the different people, and now
Ron Boyd and
yeah. Oh man, Doug and Boyd gave us watches for years. Everybody wanted a watch. That was their big deal. Yep. Was that on that Sunday afternoon, that Sunday when they played, and that was Sherwin Cox's idea. Sherwin always had a lot of great ideas, and he expanded everything. And it's like where we got to where we could sell out. Once we got a sponsor and we had a charity, then we could sell alcohol with it too. But going back to the Tall Tower, the original Tall Tower it went on the road, and it went to Memphis.
Yep,
it went to Dumas. In fact, somebody gave me. They always gave away stuff. First off, they always gave away KVI hats. I knew a guy that had like 20 of them at one time because that was our big deal. Everybody would wear a KVI hat. But somebody gave me like a scorecard, a pencil, or something they gave away in Dumas the year they were up there. But I can tell this story because nobody's around now. But apparently, they went to Memphis, and it was like a 3-day deal. They went down on Friday, played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and drove back. Well, they had to have something to do on Saturday night, so they partied. And apparently, one of our co-anchors got too friendly with the mayor of Memphis one night. It got a little too rowdy, and they decided, that's when Amber and McKissick said, maybe we ought to just figure out a way to do this and have it back just in Amarillo. So they got together with Sherwin at Ross, and they moved it back into town full time. But in the old days, we used to have people come in from Oklahoma before we shut down we used to have a translator in Sayre.
Yep.
Well, all of Western Oklahoma, the people that wanted to watch TV had to watch us.
Yeah.
You don't realize, how big the Western Oklahoma is. There's a lot of.
I do. We have an office in Elk City.
You do. So Elk City, all the way west, that was us. And so we'd have people come over.
On that note, I will tell you this, and this is my opinion. I'm going to do an editorial right here. Tournament golf today in the Texas Panhandle is thanks to Sherwin Cox.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Hands down.
Yeah.
He put tournament golf on the map in Amarillo, Texas, and the golf courses that we have, the 2 municipal courses, those are all dream childs of Sherwin. And I've known Sherwin since I was 12 years old because I played on the junior tour back then when he was the assistant pro at Pampa with Hart Warren. I had a bad day, tore my scorecard up, threw it in the trash, and it was the day my mom took us. And I'm like, oh, everybody's watching the podcast.
Oh, I forgot to turn my phone off.
Everybody's watching the podcast. Yeah. So I threw my card away. I did not play well, and our moms took turns taking us, and there was about 5 of us. So Mom comes walking up, and I'm going, well, we got to go, and I'm ready, trying to herd her back to the car. She goes, I'm going to go see how everybody played, and she gets up there, and there's a NA or whatever by my name, and so she's up there talking to Sherwin because he had to run the tournament, being the assistant. Yeah. And she goes, and I had to apologize to Sherwin, and I've told him this story, and we laugh about it because Sherwin Cox and I are very good friends, and it goes back to being a childhood watcher of this. My dad was a coach, and I grew up interested in sports, and I go back to Woody Van Dyke and those guys. Yeah. Kim and I went to the one year we brought football back. The first year we brought football back after dropping it for a year. We were everybody's homecoming.
Yes.
So we're at Hardin Simmons, and I get emotion up. There's nobody from WT there except me and Kim. We go to all the games, and it's Woody Van Dyke, and he's doing radio down there.
Yeah.
And he calls me up in the booth. He said, "Are you from WT?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Can you come up and do halftime with us and just talk a little bit about the university?" I would be happy to. Man, you talking about a moment.
Wow.
I mean, I grew up watching him, and there he was. And so, yeah.
Speaking of coaches, Lee, I mean, you've chatted with the best of them, and the coaches around here. Tell our viewers, I felt it. You know what I mean? They were so good to the media.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not always that way.
No.
Relationship, but you were definitely a part of that who made it a friendly give and take. So. What did the coaches in this area mean to you?
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I spent Sunday morning, I got a new phone number, and so I spent Sunday, and I still had my old phone because I hadn't turned it. I got a whole new, it's not easy for someone my age, all this monotonous stuff. Anyway, I spent all Sunday morning, and I would just, all the football coaches are athletic directors, so I texted the same message, and I just said, I'm retired. I just want to say thanks to making my job so easy as it was, and continued success. And I just copy and pasted it, and I sent it to every coach that was in my phone thing. And I didn't expect them to respond, but they all responded.
Wow!
They all came back and said, "We enjoyed it. You did great. Enjoy retirement. See you on the golf course." That sort of thing. Yeah. So the only time I can ever think of a high school, and I don't even remember the person's name, and it wasn't even to me, but we used to have this deal during preseason football. We would send people out, like we would just get innocuous photogs, give them 3 questions. You go to Perryton, you go to Follett, you go to Darrowsett, and then come back or whatever. So this girl, I sent a girl out. She was a competent photog, and she goes to Perryton. Man, I don't even remember who the coach was. She comes back, she goes, "Coach wouldn't talk to me." I go, "What?" She goes, "He said I was a girl. I didn't know anything about football, and he wouldn't talk to me."
Really?
Really? I went. So I didn't call him back. I just went, "Okay, yeah. I'm gonna leave that one alone."
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't gonna do any good. I'm a girl dad. Okay, I get it. I'm a girl dad. So I go, wow. And this is in the 90s. This was in the 90s. Sometimes, and I don't even remember who the coach was, but he didn't think she should be asking him questions because she didn't really comprehend what she was doing. And all I wanted him to do was get in front of the camera and talk so I could play it on the air. Yeah. But that's about but I can't think of any high school coach whoever. In fact, one time a Canadian coach, Ronnie, all these names are right. Anyway, he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, they're trying to fire me in Canadian. You want to come up here and do a story?" I go, so he explained the problem. I go, and I think they had that in Panhandle one time. There's, it's just always local politics involved. But I have to honestly say, I can't think of a high school coach that I ever called, that I ever asked him for an interview or to talk to someone or to do a story that they ever said no. Ever.
That's awesome.
And they always made themselves accessible somehow, sometime, somewhere.
Here's a compliment to you both, because you've both been in this industry for a long time. But specifically, Lee, I was talking to Coach Cooper Saturday at the ball game at WT, and we were talking about you because he didn't know. And he said, Jimmy, he goes, here's the problem with this direction that they're trying to go with this anchorless newscast. And I'm going to get off beat here. They don't understand, and he's talking for himself, how much we have invested with people like Lee and how much we have invested with people like you. And we have a relationship, and we want to see those people because we trust them, and we have relationships with them, and those are our guys. Yeah. And they're part of our team, and they help promote our teams. And he was really passionate about that. And that's where, today's newscast doing what they're doing, we lose that on this local level, because I've always said the Texas Panhandle is very different. We're really close. A man's word and a handshake's still worth something around here. But when you've got a very successful college coach and now county commissioner, spouting off all the things about the relationship that he had with you and people like Lance, and we start to lose that. Yeah, we've lost part of ourselves, and that's the point.
Let me just say on that note that I don't mean any ill will towards Channel 7 because of the way it ended, and I don't want it to be successful. And DJ Ezel is there, and he's
DJ was standing right there when I was talking to Coop.
He was very professional. DJ, very professional, very competent, and he will do a good job. Yeah. And as someone said, and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but you're kind of personality driven in local television. Everybody there are probably still people here who remember Roy McCoy. Everybody remembers Roy. He was here when I got here, and he was here for a long time after that, doing weekends, even when he kind of retired. So everybody remembers people like that. I got a call from a gentleman named Kevin Lovell. Kevin Lovell used to be a reporter at KVII, and he left either right as I got there and went Stanley Marsh owned a station in El Paso, KVIA. It's still there. But he sold that one also. And anyway, Kevin Lovell called me. He moved to El Paso. He became the news director. He retired after like 40 years. So he called to rehash old KVII stories. But it's people like that continually do things that make it amazing. And DJ will do a good job. Yeah, it's going to be a little different for people, but they're already backtracking a little bit because I talked to the anchor man, David Bradley, even though he's not really on the air, because they didn't want anybody on the air except the weatherman. But now they told him they can have, they want him to, quote, front a story, be on camera to introduce a story. But there won't be anybody. There was no desk. There is no desk.
So you're talking about the personalities. My son-in-law, Luke, today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Luke.
Happy birthday.
Grew up in Devall, Oklahoma, about 30, 45 miles this side of Lawton. When he moved up here, first thing he looked up, he goes, "That's my guy. That's my guy." Because David was at the Lawton station for 25 years. But he goes, "That's my guy. That's my news guy."
I tell you a story about that.
Yeah.
How we've crossed paths. 1986. You're like this one. 1986. I'm still at Channel 10. Well, Channel 10 owned the station in Lawton. They own other stations, but they own the station in Lawton. So Lawton, sports guy leaves. The number 2 guy finds out he's not going to get the job. He just packs up and leaves. I got no sports guys. So Kevin Long and I spend a month taking turns working in Lawton, Oklahoma. We literally waved at each other in Clarendon on a Sunday morning. He would be coming back, I'd be going. And they didn't have any sports guys. We worked for a whole month. The guy they hired, David Bradley.
Yeah.
How weird.
Sports guy?
Yeah, he became the sports guy. So we were talking about that the other day because it was the Sunday I was there was the day Jack Nicklaus won the Masters, 1986. Because the lady who was the anchor, co-news director or whatever, she lived on a golf course. She had a condo on a golf course. So I took my golf clubs and we played golf while we were over there. And David became the sports guy, and he told me, he said, the only reason I got to be the sports director was that there was another guy they hired. He said, I was in Fort Smith and I could get there faster than the other guy from Virginia. And then he slowly changed. He said, I asked him one time, I said, how did you change from sports to news? Because John McKissick did it. A lot of people do it because they, with a family life, sometimes you want to do it different. Andy did it. Yeah. And he did a great job too. Ed's doing a great job. But David said, I think it was when the Murrah building issue happened. He said he got a call from somebody saying that our news director or somebody was freaking out. Could he come in and help? And he did some stories that were really good. And he said later he did one on the Moore, Oklahoma tornadoes, and then he decided to do the job full time as news. But anyway, it's kind of weird how everything connects before it's all over. Yeah. And I do think that it'll be interesting to see how the works goes. For anybody who doesn't know, we're also doing it at our station in Abilene. They did it in Dayton, Ohio, which is a really fairly big city.
Yeah.
And they did it in Lincoln. It's a combo market, Lincoln, Kearney, Nebraska. And it's not going over very well there. So, because people are used to seeing who they have on the air.
Yeah, we want to see you.
People on there. That's fine. But it'll be, and everything changes. I mean, look at the newspaper. I was thinking about you the other day. When I was cleaning out my desk, I found all these newspaper clippings, and they were all from golf tournaments. They were in color, had pictures, had names. And I was such a good golfer back then. I was next to Casey Weiss. I was in the third flight while he was winning the city championship or whatever. But it in fact, someone pointed that out to me in one of the tweets about how it hit the newspapers back in the early 2000s. And then it's slowly morphing its way into other stuff.
Yeah, I lived that part of it, 38 years there.
Well, yeah. In fact, yesterday I was watching something on the Golf Channel, and they were interviewing a guy, and he was talking about how, like in the media center now, there's maybe 4 writers.
I know. 4.
He goes, it's all podcasts, internet, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I go, 4 writers. And I'm thinking, and then the guy on the air started going through a litany of all the golf writers and all the great golf writers when they were all newspaper guys. And now this guy said there's maybe 4 or 5. I mean, there's only like Golf Week magazine and a couple others that even carry that kind of stuff anymore. Yeah. So that's fascinating the way it's changed. Yeah. Make a big difference.
Here's what I'll say if I'm going to close my part out today. I'll still get to see you because we've been friends a long time and we'll continue to be friends. But I'm going to miss seeing you on the news. I'm going to miss that sports cast. But I'm a football guy. I love everything about football, and I love a lot of sports, but I love everything about football. But to be honest with you, the one thing I'm going to miss the most every time, it's high, it's hard, it's handsome, it's history.
Thank you.
I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that during baseball season.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I am.
I know I made that up sort of by myself, and I stole part of it.
Yeah.
From from an old Detroit Tiger guy who did it.
Okay.
He did the 3. I added a 4th.
Yeah. Well,
So I can't.
I'm going to miss that.
I have to admit
baseball
that, but I always like doing that. Thank you.
I'm going to miss that.
Let me just say that, so we went through it at the newspaper, 38 years, kind of it just collapses in front of you. And you see Lee's mentality, and you see why he's such a great guy is he's not bitter, and that's kind of how I left it too. I just said, okay, it changed.
Yeah.
It's not for me. And we all want to go out on our own terms. I just want to say that's the one thing I don't like, the way you're having to go out with this particular situation. It's not on your own terms. However, well done, man. Well done.
Thank you.
You just did an amazing job. I came in in 82. You just
You were right. Yeah.
We've had our paths. We've been to
everywhere.
Press conferences together.
Oh gosh.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But the chili dog, we cannot leave this
Yep.
this podcast without Lee Baker. I know the press box wants to see you up there eating a chili dog next fall.
I probably will do it. Dr. Heffley at the AISD said that I could have a pass, come to a game whenever I want. So I'm already thinking that I think on the first night of Bivens, first Friday night.
Tell our listeners, your chili dog tradition.
I've eaten a chili dog at Dick Bivens on the opening night of every football game for as long as I can remember. I just go up and get a chili dog. And I'm not a really, I don't eat that kind of food a lot.
Yeah,
like I'm not a nachos and chips guy because I try to watch my weight and so forth. And so as I've gotten older, but I do have a chili dog every time.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Lee, great job.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me here. It's been a wonderful
Thanks
chat.
for all you've done for us here at Kids Inc. Thanks for what you've done for this Panhandle area. And we're grateful.
My daughters came here. One played basketball, one did cheerleading. It's a wonderful organization. Never ever not be a thing for the community, the youth in the community in the area. And I got to say, we were supposed to have this a couple 3 weeks ago, and he texted me, I can't do this. I got to go to Hereford. I got a minute, And
so we were supposed to do this a couple weeks ago, and Lee said, hey, they need me to stay for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Technical difficulty.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, if you're having to stay another 2 weeks, more severance and get a brand new set of golf clubs and some woods out of the deal.
Not the severance.
There you go. I said, get a new set of clubs out of the deal too.
I tried that. That didn't work. Thank you all again. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for being here.
Great stuff. We appreciate you today. Hey, this has been the Fieldhouse Podcast. It is a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. And like we always say, we'll see you when we see you.